Hello everyone, my name is Samantha Jackson. I normally like roaming a stage. They are helping me record tonight's session, so I will be staying at the lectern. So you're probably a whole lot luckier that I'm not roaming. As Ophelia said, we're going to do it in two segments. You'll learn that I am going to start talking incredibly quickly, only because I have a lot to get through tonight. So this, to me, is your introduction to Education USA. Has anyone seen me speak before? Hands up. Okay, there's a couple of hands in the audience. What you'll find is the more you listen to me or us at Education USA, the more the process is going to feel a whole lot more manageable. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to get through a session. This will also be recorded. We will also upload this session to our YouTube channel. We also have a YouTube channel that has sessions there that you can repeat and you can look at as well. So can everyone hear me okay? Great. What you did, you probably came in today and took a flyer and took a pen and possibly took my business card. My business card has my mobile number on it. You are welcome to call me. Beyond 9 p.m, I will start blacklisting you from my phone. And if you call me after business hours, it needs to be a medical emergency. But I'm also willing to help as much as I can. Education USA is part of the US government, Department of State office. The US government pay me in my job to deliver a free service throughout Australia. I am located here at the Melbourne Consulate, here at St Kilda Road in Melbourne. We have 3 US consulates in Australia. We have one in Sydney, one in Perth, one in Melbourne. And I have been in my role for about 7 years. I did my studies in the US. I was an athlete as well, and we'll run a bit of a guessing game a little bit later if you can guess my sport. So if you've met me before, it doesn't count for you. If you haven't met me yet, you may win a prize. And I also stayed in the US and got my master's degree as well. Before working at the US Consulate, I worked at Victoria University for 15 years, so I know the higher ed system very well in Australia. So I think I can talk to you as a subject expert tonight as well. I am having a couple of videos that I'm going to show you this evening for a couple of reasons. One, to rest my voice. But what I also hope tonight happens is that you'll walk away with a whole lot more information. What I really hope is that you won't want to see me again, because I think I'm kind of nice, I think I'm kind of knowledgeable, but what I am is I am going to be real, okay? And what that means is I tend to be the honest person, and if you don't want honesty, then be careful when you talk to me. That being said, what I mean by that is that I tell you where your talent is if you're looking for a sports scholarship. I tell you where your talent is if you're looking for academic US colleges. There are a lot of agencies and organisations in the marketplace that will charge you hideous amounts of money, ranging from $5,000 to $25,000 on the promise of getting to US colleges. You can certainly use those organisations, but I don't think you need to. We can very much unpack the steps in the process and help you with that today, which is I want, hopefully, today's outcome is for you in the room. Just a show of hands, anyone in Year 12? Hands high. Okay, a couple. Year 11? Year 10? Great. Year 9? Under Year 9. Okay, fantastic. It's never too early to start researching this, so I think that's great that you're here. Here's your first video. It is going to go for a minute, and I will be back in a second.
A United States education is your gateway
to a great American campus experience,
to study in a country of innovators and entrepreneurs,
to use your curiosity wisely,
to take on challenges,
to think differently,
to have endless opportunities,
to hear new perspectives,
to navigate cultural differences,
to pursue your passions,
to gain real-world experiences,
to learn skills for a changing job market,
to put theory into practice,
to become the kind of professional you want to be,
to thrive in your career,
to give back to your community and to the world,
to be the kind of person that you wouldn't have dreamed to be otherwise.
Come study.
Come study.
Come study.
Come study in the United States.
So I'm actually quite thrilled you're in the room. That is because you have an interest to going to the US. So I'm very excited by that. If you're in the room and you ask me about Canada, that's really nice you want to go to Canada, but I work for the US government and I can't help you with Canada. What we're going to do today is we're going to really stay in step one, which is research your options. EducationUSA has about 170 offices in about 400 countries. We all deliver the same information at the step level. Step one, research your options. Step two, financing your studies. We will touch on that very small amount tonight, but I will obviously do follow-up sessions that will have themes, and the expectation to come to those sessions is you need to come to a general session first, which is tonight's. We then talk about completing your application because the process is quite different, and we'll touch on that a little bit tonight. And I will do it only a little bit, but I know there's at least one Year 12 in the room, so you make me a little bit nervous, but if you're well through the process, then my nerves are going to be fine. So I will help get that student through or that family through. Obviously, applying for your student visa, if you are not an American citizen, you will have to get a student visa to get to the US. And we also offer pre-departure programming as well. So as I said, we're not going to get far out of step one today, researching your options. I think there's probably an array of reasons why you want to get to the US. I think these are probably the ones that we're hearing all the time. Sometimes it is all about reputation and variety. And what I mean by that is that as a general rule, I think I could probably guess the top 20 academic institutions that people want to apply to go to the US. So I'm going to throw out a question. Do you know how many universities are in Australia that you can choose from? So there's about 41 on any given day. In the US, there's over 4,500. So there are definitely colleges that you can make your own and make your fit. So often it is because of reputation and variety. And what I mean by that, a lot of people that want to apply to academic institutions only want to go to Stanford, only want to go to UC Berkeley, only want to go to Princeton, Yale, Harvard, UPenn. They are fine institutions and they could be very much your best fit institution. And I'm going to talk to you a lot tonight about identifying your best fit. Because if they are your best fit institutions, then you should be going to those institutions. But if you're telling me you're going to those institutions so you sound cool at a family barbecue, that's the wrong reason to be going to those US colleges. Okay? I think the other reason why you're going there very much so is the campus life. I can put my hand on my heart and say what the US colleges have is a campus life and a heartbeat. And you will have great Australian institutions that you're going to if you decide to stay in Melbourne. But what you are deciding against is, do you want to stay living at home? Nothing wrong with living at home, but having a commuting institution experience, as in driving from home, going to college, leaving college, going back home again. Nothing wrong with that. But what you obviously need to think about is that cost of experience and that element of campus living, campus life, and that campus heartbeat. And that is something that you're very much considering and looking at. I see phones coming out and taking photos of the PowerPoint. I have no problem if you do that, but I am going to send you the PowerPoint at the end of the session, which is why I asked you to tick your name on the registration list, because if you tick your name, you will get an after-event email. If you don't tick your name, you will just get a, I'm sorry you didn't come tonight, you missed a great night, everyone will tell you it was great. Again, academic flexibility I think is also a wonderful reason to go to the US. And the reason I say that is when you finish Year 12 in Australia, you have to pick your major straight away to go to an Australian university. I don't know about you, but the 16, 17, 18-year-olds in the audience, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So if you know what you want to be after high school and you know what you want to study, then maybe the Australia piece is fine. But if you don't know what you want to study, then I think the US can be an even better model because you often don't have to pick your major until your second year into a US study. Now, I need to remind you that when you go to an Australian university, it's a 3-year undergraduate year. When you go to a US university, it's 4 years, okay? So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about the funding opportunities. And if you happen to be an athlete in the room, and a very good athlete in the room, then I think that college sport cannot be beaten anywhere in the world that the US does. Because what they do is they want you firstly to be an academic, because you're a student athlete, so you're always a student first. So what they want is for you to be a student first and an athlete second, but they actually combine them very well and let you succeed at both. If you stay in Australia and play your sport, you often can't do that very well with a university degree here in Australia as well. Again, it can be the unemployment, you're looking for that global experience. So the fact that you're here in the room tonight, I think you're already drinking the right Kool-Aid, so I don't have to convince you anymore in that regard as well. As I said, I hope you see me again. I hope you come to my further programming. But what I want to achieve tonight, that if you decide never to see me again, I actually want to give you some information because I think knowledge is power, and I'm going to give that to you tonight as well. So often I said there's over 4,500 universities in the US, and their names are going to be different. Sometimes they'll have the word college in the name, sometimes they'll have the word university in the name. Are there, show of hands, any basketballers in the room? Okay. All right, I'm going to pick at the guy at the back. He's got a Scotch uniform. Steph Curry, do you know his name? Do you know where he went to school? That's what, Davidson what? It's Davidson College, okay? So he absolutely did go to Davidson. It has the word college on the end of that. That is a liberal arts institution, and what that means, you can only go to those schools for your first degree. So they'll only offer undergraduate degrees generally. The word university in the name means you could go there and do your first degree, your undergrad. You could also stay and do masters, move through to PhD. So often that's the difference between the name of a college versus university. Does that make sense? And thanks to Steph Curry, he makes my talks a whole lot easier. Again, I want you to walk away with some information tonight. I want you to watch this video. This is very much talking about that liberal arts model experience. It is something that a lot of Australians are foreign to. Since University of Melbourne has gone to the Dream Big campaign, they are also moving into a liberal arts model where you're doing your general degrees first and then moving into postgrad. So this video is 2 minutes. Watch this, and I will be back in 2 minutes. Oops, maybe I won't.
So at the start of every class, I let students ask absolutely any questions. The way I'll often frame it is, auto mechanics to quantum mechanics, ask me anything.
All right, guys, so any questions? Auto mechanics to quantum mechanics, anything at all in your mind?
Do you believe that there is intelligent or non-intelligent life on other planets?
This process of engaging any questions is really about the liberal arts classroom. We look at the interconnections amongst all of the different fields that we study. Not just that there are singular questions that an anthropologist or a chemist can solve, but that all of these questions are linked. And what I do by allowing students to ask any question is say, look, what you're interested in, what you're thinking about has to do with what we're doing here, even though this may not be a class in that topic. All of these dots get connected, and what we do at a liberal arts college is connect those dots. So I encourage students to bring in these questions they might have from any part of their life, whether it's intellectual, particular academic classes, a personal question. All of these things are going to, in the end, be relevant to the sort of philosophy we teach here. I want my students to be intellectually alive, to take in the world that we have and see it in this fascinating, multifaceted way, to break out of the rut that we tend to be placed in where you see things only in one particular fashion. And I think that by making the classroom live so that no one knows what question is being asked, no one knows what answer is coming, what that does is create an environment where that sort of electricity can be created.
I think sometimes videos are telling a story a whole lot better than I can and I will, so I hope you found that helpful. I think it's also really important that you need to evaluate your academic profile. It's no good getting into Harvard if you're going to have 70 on your ATAR. So it is about identifying your profile and what that means. And US colleges will actually help you identify that profile with them even before you apply. I think what is really hard to fathom for international families is that US colleges have international admissions departments to help families and students like you. So it's always important and very valuable to be engaging with those universities as well. Again, I think it's really important to start asking yourself some questions. Okay, so you want to go to a US college? Great. My question is where? My question is why? And my question is you need to start thinking about some questions to help you with that. So this is going to be a 1-minute video. And as the questions flash up on the screen, I want to see if you can start answering them. Show of hands, can anyone answer any of those questions? So that kind of makes me nervous. So not one hand went up. So we're still answering those questions and thinking about that? So if someone had a magical wand today, do you know where you want to apply? Do you want to shout it out? Oh, so now you're nervous because you know Samantha's going to ask you a follow-up question. So I'm going to keep on going, all right? But I think they're really important questions to start thinking about, okay? And I also think it's important to understand the timelines. So these are the timelines matched to our American, let me rephrase that. These are the timelines matched to our Australian calendars, okay? So we want to make it easier for you. So I want you to start thinking about a couple of things. I know there were some people under Year 9. I know there's some people in Year 9. It is never too early to start researching. And these are really some good examples and timelines to think about. So really in Year 9, what you need to be considering is focusing really well on your classes still at your Australian high school, because American colleges are going to want your transcripts from the last 4 years of high school. So they want Year 9, Year 10, Year 11 and Year 12 from Australia. Okay, so it becomes really important that you start knuckling down in your classes and doing the best that you can be. And sometimes it's about getting involved in the classroom or even outside the classroom, but it's also working on what your passions are and what you're excited by and what you're involved in. Because US colleges, when you start to write your application, they're going to ask you what you're involved in, what you're passionate about, what you want to bring to that college, and also how the college can help you. So these timelines will certainly break down the process. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in the next couple of slides about standardised testing. Particularly in Melbourne, we have certainly had it really tough in regards to COVID. We have been the most locked down city in the world, not something that we're proud of, but something that we certainly have had. So that could be still impacting your studies. And when you're applying to US colleges, it's okay to still tell them how that impacted your studies or how that has impacted your life. The financial plan obviously becomes really important. If mums and dads are in the room or guardians, when we talk about what kind of colleges, they go to a public, go to a public's a lot more inexpensive. And that may well be correct, but there is a lot more money and endowment scholarship at private institutions. So that doesn't mean don't drop publics off your list, but it also means that you can have an array of colleges on your list that can have a lot more funding opportunities. So you're really looking at that cost of experience and what that is giving you. In regards to HECS, you will get no HECS from the Australian government that you can take to your US college. So you need to look at ways of funding your American pathway in regards to that process. There are an array of financial aid elements. If you are an incredibly talented musician, if you are an incredibly talented performing arts student, if you are an incredibly talented sponsored sports student, there can be some wonderful scholarships in regards to that. I am going to talk a little bit about some of those financial plans and those needs. Some universities don't give any academic scholarship. Do you know that? Do you know that that's Harvard, UPenn, Columbia? Do you know why they don't give scholarship? Because everyone that is going to those colleges is a brainiac. So what's the difference between your A, and my A when we are all going to those institutions? They have something called needs-based financial aid. What that means is they're going to have your family fill out some financial documentation. It is going to feel like mums and dads, they're also asking what colour underwear you have on, because they are going to ask some incredibly private financial questions, as in your assets, your wages, everything. It is an incredibly private document between you and the institution. They will review it and they will say, with your amount of assets and money, we would give you this much money to help your son and daughter come to our college. Or they may say, you only have one family member that is working, you have 4 other siblings that are going to university, we will almost give you everything, can you just pay this much? So that is needs-based financial aid. There is only 5 true institutions that do that. More are doing that for international students, but a lot do not give that kind of funding for international students, so it's also important to research that. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, loans, internships, scholarships, tuition, work-study programs all exist at US colleges. For your first year, as a freshman, you're a freshman for your first year, you may have to pay all of your accommodation fees. But when you're a second-year student, you're a sophomore. When you're a third-year student, you're a junior. When you're a fourth year, you're a senior. Maybe when you're a junior and a senior, you become a resident advisor, which means you are the senior student on the floor of your halls and your accommodation is all covered. So there are other ways that you can get that university cost covered as well. I want you to walk away with some information tonight. I said information is and knowledge is power. I want you to be aware of the process, okay, because it is quite different. And I want you to feel comfortable with the process. And I also think what's interesting is that this process is no easier for Americans as well. They are challenged by the same steps and process, and it is just as difficult for their sons and daughters to also apply to get to US college. So the orange array of the symbols in front of me, they're going to require your school transcripts. As I mentioned earlier, they're going to require Year 9, Year 10, Year 11 and Year 12 as part of your application process. If you are going to a school, your career practitioner tends to be the central person at your high school that can very much help you with the process. Also remembering that your schools in Australia, their core job is not to get you to a foreign university. My core job is to get you to a foreign university, not your school staff. That being said, the school staff go out of their way to learn this process, and we have upskilled and trained a lot of them. If you happen to be going to a school and this is all foreign to them, then they probably have never met my office, and we encourage you to make sure that they make contact with us as well. Before COVID, most of the colleges would require you to do an SAT or an ACT. There are two different standardised tests. In Victoria, we have worked very hard with our school partners, so it is much easier to do an SAT in the state of Victoria. When the ACTs turned into computer tests about 5 years ago, schools could no longer be the deliverer of that test, which is why the ACT is very hard to do in this country. That being said, a lot of universities are now saying it's not indicative of 4 hours on a Saturday that's going to show us if you're going to be successful at our institution or not. So a lot of schools are no longer requiring standardised testing results. University of California institutions have not required standardised tests for 3 years. University of Chicago, one of the most academic institutions on the planet, has not required standardised tests for at least 3 years, okay? And the NCAA this January said you don't need standardised test results as part of our eligibility process. So that is all great news for Australian and international students in regards to that pathway. The other interesting thing that US colleges, they're going to ask you for a written essay. So often, I'm going to talk in more detail in a minute about something called the Common App. There are 6 prompts every year that you need to pick as a student, and you have 650 words to tell your story. Now, I can tell you that these institutions, for instance, NYU got 107,000 applications last year for 3,000 spots. And these admissions directors twice read these applications. And these admissions directors have read millions. And these admission directors can smell bullshit and smell a 40-year-old voice in your parents' voice and not an 18-year-old voice. So it becomes really important that you're telling your story and you're not having your parents or someone else write what you think is a good story. Does that make sense? All right. So that story piece becomes a really important component of the American application process. Then there is reference letters. Most US colleges will ask for 2 recommendation letters as part of your application. Okay? Most of them will say we need 2 current school teachers within the last 12 months. So that means you need to be talking to your school staff about these letters. If you are in year 12 and right now is a really good time of the year and you haven't spoken to your referees yet, then you are starting to get very late. Also knowing that school staff have a lot of other responsibilities. So if you don't give them enough time to write a very good letter, it is not their fault, okay? So it becomes really important that you start identifying who those possible 2 letters can be coming from. Again, all the institutions have their own rules. This is the hard thing about the US college process. When you apply to an Australian university, it is very simple. You'll write on a piece of paper your top 10, it gets matched to your ATAR. All Australian universities care about is a number. The universities have something called a holistic application process, and although test results are going to be important, they actually want to learn more about you and what you can offer more than just a number. Does that make sense? All right. So I think the rest of those make a certain extent. They're going to want to know what you're involved in your school days. They're going to want to know what you're involved in outside of school. And obviously that financial assistance, we've kind of touched on that already. I also want you to be aware of how the process is different. And I said knowledge is power. And after you leave tonight, you're going to know how to apply to a US college. But US colleges also have different application types. The most common one that most of you will use, that school staff are the most experienced in supporting, is something called the Common Application. You use their Common Application portal and you can send that out to multiple institutions at the US. Over 1,000 colleges are registered for the Common App, and that is probably the tool that most of you will use. There is also school-specific applications. University of California's has their own application portal. So if you want to apply to any of those schools, you'll need to use the University of California application portal. If you apply to Texas or Minnesota universities, you'll need to use their state application. So again, it becomes really important to start putting your colleges of interest on a spreadsheet and start capturing, okay, what kind of application type do they use, and enter that in the spreadsheet. Then, interestingly, they have different deadlines, all right? So now I want you to all think that you've got your Year 12 hat on, okay? Everyone in the room, think that you're in Year 12. Because what that means, when you get towards the end of Year 12, you are also applying to US colleges. There is an application type called early decision, ED for short. You can only ever apply to one US institution, ED, early decision. The challenge with that is the application is either due November 1 or November 15. For any Year 12s in the room, you'll be knowing that you'll be sitting exams in October and November of Year 12, which is when those applications are due. Now, that's okay, because you just got to push buttons. Please don't push button at 11:59 p.m. when it's due at midnight. We suggest that you probably lodge them a couple of days before, because if you forget to attach something because you haven't followed directions, it also means that the US college can get back to you to lodge it before the deadline so that your application can still be reviewed. Because if you haven't given them all the things that they want, they will not review your application, and they'll put you in the bin, all right? So there's early decision. Here's the kicker. It is a binding agreement, which means if they accept you, regardless of their financial plan, you are supposed to accept that offer and remove your applications from all over the world, including Melbourne. So you need to be very clear if you're going to use early decision. And then you go, but Samantha, how are they going to find out I applied to Australia? And I'm going to say, they probably aren't, but that's still not the right thing that you should be doing, because if they found out and you get accepted early decision, they will take it away from you, okay? So please be aware of that. There is also an application type called early action. I like it a lot if the US college you want to apply to allows you to do early action. Again, the same deadline, November 1, November 15, but they will tell you by the end of December of Year 12 if you've been accepted into that US college or not, and you can sit there with your Australian offers and your American offers and then be done with the whole process. So I really like early action, but it doesn't work for all families, but it's still good to know. Most Americans will use something called regular decision. And families in Australia go, but Samantha, that's really good for us. I finish school in December. I can have a whole lot more time to focus on my application that is then due at the end of January. And you're absolutely correct. You do have a lot more time. But here's the kicker. They don't tell you until April 1 if you've been accepted or not. Now, Australian universities start March 1. Census date at Australian University is March 31st. So you then can't pull out your Australian university to go to a US college. Here's the other kicker. A lot of US colleges will say, you've already started at Australian University, you're no longer a freshman, you're a transfer student, and we will not accept you until you've done 12 credit hours. So then you're like, oops, I'm in trouble. Okay, does that make sense? Yes? Okay, show of hands. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right. Standardized testing, I have said that has changed from COVID. If you're incredibly good at math, you may do very well at these tests. If you're a very good test taker, you may well do very well at these tests. Hate to tell you this, but in Australia, schools don't really teach you grammar. And the ACT and the SAT are all about grammar. So if you have missed grammar in your schooling, you may be struggling with the English portion of these tests. There is a really good practice tool called the Khan Academy. You can create a free profile account. You can practice these tests until the cows come home. and that is a really good tool as well. And again, you may be sitting here going, Samantha, I'm a shit test taker, don't like them. Then there's a really cool website called fairtest.org, and these colleges never require standardised testing as part of the admission requirement. So there are colleges and good fits everywhere once you identify your good fit and your pieces as well. I think I've done enough on preparing for tests. I think we've clearly articulated what US colleges are looking for. I'm just going to give it time for people in the room to read the screen, but obviously they're looking at your grades. They could be looking at your standardised testing score. If you are in the room and you were too scared to tell me that you wanted to go to MIT, MIT are requiring SAT and ACT scores this year and beyond. So if you want to go to MIT, you will need a standardised test score. And again, they're looking at the activities and leadership and your personal statement, your voice, your story, who you are. I'm going to let you read the screen for a second. These are the Common App prompts this year. They have remained the same for the last 3 years. I don't think they're going to change because the variants of writing can be very different, but that's your 650-word response that you need to be giving to a lot of US colleges. So I'm going to give you a minute to read the screen. Start raising your hand when you finish reading that for me, please. Thanks. So that's your 650-word response. The Common App release these every January of Year 12. So Americans have been drafting this response since January that they will have as part of their application that they will lodge coming November. So if you are in Year 12 and if you have not started writing this yet, please start. I would also work with your schools who have English instructors who know how to put a good piece of writing together, who can be a really good feedback mechanism for your writing as well. I've got 2 more quick videos to show, and then I'm going to let the people in the room leave who are only here for academic entry today. And then if you are here for a student athlete and you happen to be way up the top, I want you to come right down the bottom. So I'm going to give you a couple of these videos to watch. If you have questions about tonight, please reach out to me. Please make sure that you've ticked the lists that are going around with your names on it. If you did not register tonight and you're in the room, please put your email and your name and your phone number on it. And I will send you an after event email. It will have my contact details, it will have the PowerPoint, and it will have some other information. But I want you to see these videos because it's going to give you an insight into writing that college essay and that Common App prompt. And I also want you to have a sense of how admissions directors are sitting around a table and are going to read your application.
First and foremost, when looking at essay, we're going to be looking at things like their ability to write well and their preparation for college. But we're also using that information to kind of see things like their resilience and their love of learning and their intellectual curiosity.
I always tell a student, you know, if you had the chance to come meet with the admissions committee and present yourself in person, would you want to do it? And without fail, students say, yeah, I'd love to have that opportunity. And when I ask why, they say because if they were able to get to know the admissions committee would want to admit them because they would know them and they would get to know what they're about and what makes them unique and special.
The essay is really neat in that it's one of the only places in the application where they have complete control, where they can write about the things that they've been involved in, the things that they've done.
One piece of advice I would give to every student is to ask someone who knows them a little bit to read their essay and to tell them what impressions they have of you after reading the essay?
I think the essays that work best are actually quite simple. I think students get really caught up in thinking that this essay has to encompass your entire life and it has to be groundbreaking and publishable quality, and that's a lot to ask of a high school student. So I always advise students to stick to the simple things that you know. And the essays that stand out the most in my mind are about simple things, very everyday topics.
I have seen some amazing essays about things like students walking their dog, or even their bus ride to school.
I think our hope is that if a student were to drop the essay on the floor of their high school and someone were to pick it up, it didn't have your name on it, that they'd say for sure, oh, I know that this is so-and-so's essay, because it speaks so much about your voice and your experiences and your perspective.
I think my favorite essay that I've ever read came from a student in the Midwest, and he wrote about working at a fast food restaurant. And he wrote about how people were treating him as they went through the drive-thru and how he was treating them back. He called himself an undercover anthropologist, which admittedly was a little nerdy in a Brown sort of way, but I liked his essay because I was able to see what he was seeing and feel what he was feeling. So for the purposes of the application, where we as admission officers are trying to get to know the applicant, that's a great essay.
Helpful insight? Was that, show of hands, was that a helpful insight? I can't tell. All right, that's much better. All right, final one. Let me just see if this will open. And this is what they're going to do to your applications.
This morning on Education Nation today, inside the college admissions process. It is nail-biting time for high school seniors. The applications are in, but the answers still weeks away. So how do schools decide who gets in and who misses the cut? Today got an exclusive peek at what happens behind closed doors.
That's the one thing I fear. If we're going to take a risk on a student, I'd like to know that there's some sort of compelling argument to do so.
It's a give and take. 15 minutes that can decide a student's future.
But I don't think we should deny her.
At Grinnell, a top liberal arts college in Iowa, 2 admissions officers read an application. Their comments are shared.
Wait list in order, but I could even go with a deny.
Dishes. Were you reading this one at 3 a.m.?
Then the application is parsed. Grades and scores are scrutinized.
His SAT 2 in history was a 750, so that doesn't make sense if you're getting C's.
Essays evaluated.
His essay really kind of spoke to his willingness to step out and try new things.
Comparisons made.
She's far and away the lowest in the group, which probably ends it for her.
Extracurriculars weighed.
Why should we treat a musician differently from the way we treat an athlete?
And finally, a vote.
Who would be in favor of a wait list, do you think? Okay, and Quentin, you're still sticking to your deny, huh?
I stick to it.
Well, sorry, you're outvoted.
Seth Allen is Grinnell's Dean of Admission and Financial Aid.
I would love to say that the admission process is a very straightforward process where every student is considered on their own merits. But that simply isn't true. The process is highly subjective.
Which means the pros and cons of a candidate are sometimes debated.
That's a great example of an essay. I mean, it tells us a lot about the student.
Well, but I guess I would take a contrarian perspective. He's talking about how much he's changed, but do we really see that in the evidence of his application?
For me, the issue is more of the transcript coupled with the light extracurricular involvement.
Mm-hmm. He's at a school and in an area where we'd probably like to have some more kids.
People can be very persuasive. If someone provides a rationale that you hadn't thought of, they raise issues that you hadn't really considered, your mind can change.
Who would be in favor of admitting?
Still.
1, Tina, okay. Wait list? Okay.
It's little things in the process that please us, surprise us, uncover something that we think, wow, this is someone unusual that we'd like to include in the class.
Who would vote to admit? Okay, so we'll call her an admit then.
And we want to thank Grinnell College.
don't show you that to scare you. I show you that to have an awareness. And as I said, knowledge is power, and I want to give you a lot of knowledge tonight. So if you've been in the room for the academic entry point today, that was all I was going to share in regards to the process. I will quickly show up this screen and just click through a couple. You got a double-sided flyer, I think, when you walked in the room. There is a 6-series podcast series on that where the QR code is. I highly encourage you to listen to those. I highly encourage you to start researching. The university website is the best place to go to. They are running virtual sessions all the time as well. This is the best tool. I didn't have time to show it tonight. My next session is going to be, shortlisting and researching colleges. So if that interests you, I'm going to unpack this significantly. And again, if you know what you want to study, they say this website is actually quite good, niche.com. I actually don't think it's bad. I do like the College Board one better. They have changed some of the questions and it's not as nice as it used to be. You used to be able to pick your sport and Division 1, 2 and 3, but they have taken that off the College Board, which is not nice. And again, start asking yourself questions, create that spreadsheet and continuing to engage with me. And I hope you found this helpful. YouTube channel is very good. We have some sessions there as well. A show of hands, did everyone see a flyer that got you to tonight's event? And on that flyer, it also said the Ivy Leagues are doing some online sessions. Yes, show of hands. Okay, does everyone know that the Ivy League is running some sessions with us? They ran one last Tuesday. They're running one on the Saturday, September the 9th, and they're running one on another day. Do you know? Yes? No? Okay, I will send out that flyer when I give you the after-event email. They are running 2 more sessions. They do not record their sessions, so if you want to attend, you'll need to attend that as well. I know the young people in the room are Instagram or Snapchatting. They are not Facebooking. I get it. Facebook is so uncool and not trendy now. But if you want to go to a US college, please like and follow our Education USA Australia Facebook page. All of our sessions that are public sessions are advertised on the Facebook events tab as well. Again, I'm going to let people leave the room if you're here for academics tonight. I ask that the college sport people stay in the room. We are running a little bit late. I probably need you for at least 20 minutes. So if that's okay, that would be great if you could stay in the room. Thanks for coming here tonight. If you're an athlete wannabe and you're up the top, please come down the bottom. And I'll just give a couple of minutes for people to leave the room. We are going to talk all about college sports. I want to, again, teach you some knowledge and hope that you're very aware about those opportunities for college sports. So I said we were going to give some giveaways. Can anyone guess my sport? No. Soccer? No. 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 What's the hand up there saying? You've met me before. You have. But I'm happy you have another. Yes, I'm a golfer. So if you want another one, I'm happy for you to come and get it up there. Go on down there. There. Even if you cheated. Even if you cheated. So yeah, I was a golfer in a past life. My handicap was scratch when I finished college. I was not good enough to turn pro. I stayed in the US and got my master's degree. So I love the fact that I've got a room full of athletes. I'm going to be a bit biased now. I am a female. There is something in the US called NFL football, which has 125 guys getting scholarships, which means Title IX went through in 1972, and they've got to give equal opportunity to females, which is why there is a lot of non-revenue sports at US colleges. And if you're a female and you have some athletic talent, you have a lot more chance of getting to a US college than you are if you're a male. Playing basketball, which is an American pastime sport. Doesn't mean it's impossible, just means it's very difficult. If you're a baseball player, it is very difficult because baseballers start when they're like 3 in the US. So that's who you're competing against. And that's okay, but you need to know who you're competing against. If you're playing a sport that is measurable, swimming, you have a time, maybe rowing a little bit because you have an erg, but not really. Athletics, because how high you jump is how high you jump. It becomes a whole lot easier to be recruited for your sport. If you're playing a team sport, it is a lot harder because you need to identify how good you are and how good you are to coaches over there. If you're on the Junior Matildas team, you're a very good soccer player. If you're not on the Junior Matildas team, how good are you? I don't know. Let's identify that. But while I am talking about Matildas and soccer, go soccer. So if you're a female in the room and playing soccer, that's pretty cool. So just to show us sports, and I'm not going to get them. Soccer, hands up. Diving, swimming, baseball, basketball, rowing. Okay, rowing men. Okay, rowing men. You need to know that it's not an NCAA sport, but it follows all the NCAA rules. Okay? Sports that I haven't said? Yep. Athletics? Yep. Tennis? What's your UTR? Don't have to answer that right now because I don't want to embarrass you. The white jumper here, what were you? Okay, cool. All right. What was that? Fencing? Okay, I love fencing. Okay. Who said fencing? All right. Does anyone in the room like NYU, New York University? Okay. Do you know it's a Division 3 school? Do you know that Division 3 schools don't give athletic scholarships? You only get athletic scholarships at Division 1 and Division 2 schools? Do you know what athletic team is Division 1 at NYU? There's the clue. Fencing, because someone died and gave a shitload of money to NYU and said you can only spend it on the fencing program. So you laugh, but fencing at NYU is Division 1. All right. Now, there's a couple of different associations. Junior colleges, often called JUCOs, often called community colleges. They're 2-year colleges, okay? If you go to California, it has its own association, and they do not give sports scholarships to international students. Junior colleges are 2 years, so they're like our TAFE. You could get an associate's degree, you could go on to a 4-year institution in the US, or you could say, that's enough of me being in America, I want to come back to Australia, and you could then go on to a university here in Australia after doing your first 2 years in the US. There are also 2 other associations. One is called the NAIA. They are 4-year institutions. They are known as the Small College Specialist, and they are 4-year institutions as well. A lot of those tend to be religious affiliated, so you need to make sure you're comfortable with that religious affiliation. What do I mean by that? You may have to go to prayer every morning. You may have to be talking in tongues when you go to prayer every morning. So if that's not your gig, that's probably not going to be your school. So remember we said best fit? We are looking for best fit. Then the most famous that most people have heard of is the NCAA. March Madness, basketball, thank you very much. US colleges get paid a shitload of money with their football teams and their basketball teams that obviously then have a whole lot of other things that the university can spend. There is one other thing, Division 1, 2 and 3. I mentioned that you can't get a scholarship at Division 3, right? You only get a scholarship at Division 1 and Division 2. Now that doesn't mean it's a better college at Division 1 than Division 3. It just means the size of the athletic department denotes if it's Division 1 or Division 3. Some of the best academic institutions in the US will be Division 3. It also doesn't mean that is a low-level competition. It is not. It is still incredibly competitive, and if you are not a good athlete, you will not get a sports scholarship, okay? So it is about your talent, and where that is and how that works. So I think I've explained the divisions. I think I've explained the athletic scholarships. And what's important is that you need to make sure that your sport is played at those institutions. So these are NCAA sports that we've spoken about. I lie. These are junior college, NG community college sports. Their logos look very similar. These are NAIA sports. And these are NCAA sports. And then you go, but my sport's not on the list. What does that mean? That just means it's not under those governing regulations. It also means that you still might be able to get scholarships for your sport. Any snow sports specialists in the room? Okay, because it has its own association and you could get snow scholarships under those organisations. Any cyclists in the room? The Cycling Association has their own association and there are other ways to get funding, okay? So again, it's about best fit. You know, it's that athletic fit. Am I going to get on the team? Am I going to play? Am I going to do those things? It's the academic fit. You know, my academic rigour is going to match that. And obviously it's the financial fit as well. Some sports are all a little bit different, okay? Basketball and football, NFL football in the US for NCAA are head count sports. That means everyone on the team gets a full scholarship. Not all sports are head count sports. Women's volleyball is a head count sport as well. Women's gymnastics is a head count sport, so everyone gets a full ride. But all the other sports means that they often split up the scholarships. And when you're on a scholarship team with a big squad, you'll notice that you won't get enough scholarships for the whole team, okay? Men's tennis doesn't give many scholarships out, so it's all about a UTR. So if your UTR is not close to 13 as a male, you are going to find it very hard to get recruited at a Division I college. Okay, does that make sense? So it is about evaluating your talent, okay? It is about working out how good you are, and it is about building relationship with coaches. If you don't start communicating with coaches in about year 11, you may miss the boat if you only start doing it in year 12. It doesn't mean it's impossible, it just might be a lot more difficult. Does that make sense? Again, the requirements. They all have different requirements, okay? They're all going to expect that you graduate with a VCE or an IB certificate. It does not matter which one you do, okay? So you need to pick the IB or the VCE on the strength of you as a student. So if you're in the room and anyone at an IB school doing IB, hands up? Okay, if you're an IB student, you tend to be very good in your languages and you're very good in your math, which is why you choose an IB curriculum, okay? And again, the US university doesn't care. They recognise both and they will review both. The NAIA does not care what kind of classes you do in high school either, but they do have a couple of requirements. They expect you to have a GPA of 2.2 or above, and if you do, you're an automatic qualifier for the NAIA. If your GPA is not above a 2.2, which is about a C average, then they're going to expect you to do one of three things. One, take the SAT and score a certain score, or they're going to expect that you're in the top 50% of your class. And if you are not, you will not meet the eligibility requirements of the NAIA and you will be rejected. The NCAA is expecting you to do the right subjects from year 9 on. I sent that flyer around that you all have. I'm going to talk to you about the 16 core in a second because knowledge is power and you will know how all of that works. I will send you these links. You will have these links. This booklet, who is it? That's only been released in the last 2 weeks, the NCAA booklet. Bookmark it, put it on your pillow, don't care where it is, but you need to be referring to it a lot if you're an NCAA wannabe student. They update this annually. It is a great resource. It's hard to read cover to cover, but when you have a particular question, it is a well laid out little booklet. Researching, that becomes fun. The flyer that you have tonight, we think we step you through it pretty well. There are some really cool search tools. You are getting the PowerPoint, so don't worry about it. Sometimes the research tools are really hard to find. This is the junior college search tool. I think it's awesome. Here's the NAIA. You might like looking at a map because you're a visual learner, or you might be a data-driven learner, so they have a different one on the left. Again, the NCAA have these cool resources as well. They have the map one on the right. Every dot is a map, is a program, and they also have the directory as well. Now, I think I have a pointer. Do I have a pointer? Okay, I do have a pointer. I think what's really interesting, how good do you know geography? You might think, I know it pretty well. But what's interesting about that is all the dots are a college. Everyone goes, I want to go to California. There's really not many dots in California. Just want to point that out. Most of the dots are Midwest to the east, which again is interesting because if you hate the snow, you could be in trouble. So again, it becomes really important about what's important to you and how you do that. But I think they're really cool resources that they do as well. The NCAA, is anyone dreaming to be an NCAA student? Show of hands. Okay, if you want to be an NCAA wannabe student, this school holidays, which is only in a couple of weeks, if you have not set up a free profile account with the NCAA yet, I encourage you to. It will take you about 45 minutes to set it up. The NCAA cannot review your file until they have your transcripts from the end of Year 12. So that's why I say have a free profile, think about whether you want to be an NCAA student, and if you do, and you are being actively recruited by a coach, then you have to pay the $150 to turn it into a certification account. Okay? So I would have mum and dads and guardians in the room hang on to your $150 for as long as possible until you are really sure that you want to be recruited as an NCAA student. And again, that's the NCAA rule. You need a 2.3 GPA from Year 9 through to Year 12 on your core courses only. And you no longer need a standardised test score, but you need to make sure you do the right subjects, and I'm going to talk you through that in 1 second. Again, you need to register if you want to be an NAIA student. It will cost you $160 to set up that profile. What's interesting with the NAIA, they also require you to set up an in-cred account because they review your transcripts through this system. The NCAA's $150 includes the transcript maintenance as well. Does that make sense? And again, these are the NAIA rules. You need a 2.3 GPA, and if you do, you're an automatic qualifier. That's all you need. If you don't have 2.3, you need 2 of the 3 on this side, okay? If you don't have high enough high school grades. Make sense? Show of hands, yes? Cool. All right, NCAA core courses. You've all got the flyers in front of you? Yes. Who has set their NCAA core courses and knows exactly what we're talking about? Okay, there's not many hands in the room. Makes me a little nervous. I don't have a flyer. Is it still in the room? I think I know it by memory. Let's see how I go. The flyer says, I need 4 years of English, okay? And in Victoria, that is great because it is legislation that you need to do 4 years of English. In South Australia, in Tasmania, you don't need to do that. But you need to do 4 years of English. Year 9 English, Year 10 English, thanks Ophelia, Year 11 English, Year 12 English. That's 4 subjects out of 16 done. You now only have to do 12. Okay, that's simple. Next. You then need to do 3 years of math. Okay, so that's a math in Year 9, a math in Year 10, it can be a math in Year 11, and you possibly could be done. Now, if you're following the NCAA rules, it's saying if you do a subject with the word general in it, it is denied. So what we have done with some very proactive school teachers in the region is we have had that subject reviewed by the NCAA, and it is an approved core course. So general math, math methods, specialist math, are all approved math classes, all right? So you need 3 years of math. Interestingly, I tell you, you need 4 years of math, because if you go down the flyer, 2 sets of boxes, it says you need to do an extra year in English, math, or science, right? Can you see that? Now, you can't do English because your 4 years have already counted for something, okay? So you're going to have to rely on math, or you have to rely on science. So you need to do at least 2 years of physical science. That's in the next box down underneath math. So that can be a year 9 math, a year 10 math. Let me rephrase, I am tired. That is a year 9 science, year 10 science, and that could be enough. Or you can do biology, chemistry, physics in year 11 and year 12. Make sense? Show of hands, yes? Cool. We've talked about the extra subject. Now we're talking about social sciences. That is things like geography, history, psychology, legal studies in year 11 and year 12. If you go to a religious school and you are doing a senior religion in year 11 and year 12, that will also count as a social science, okay? If you go to a school and go, but Samantha, I just do 1 semester of geography and then I do 1 semester of history, that's okay. 0.5 plus 0.5 equals 1, and then you just need 1 more year of a social science. Does that make sense? Show of hands. Great. Then there's 4 boxes at the bottom. So anything that either is an overflow of the boxes we've spoken about, or if you're doing a language in year 9, 10, 11, 12, that can be part of the additional as well. Generally speaking, from about year 9 on, you're doing about 30 subjects, so you tend to always be able to get your 16. If you are in the room and taking physical education, or you plan on taking physical education year 11 and year 12, it is not a core course. That is okay. You are athletes, you are probably going to want to do physical education. You just need to know it is not a core, and you need to make sure that you're meeting your core in other ways. Does that make sense? Cool. Questions? Clear? Yeah. Correct. Or you could do general math in year 11, math methods in year 12. Correct. You could be really good at English and do English and English Lit, and you get more credit for English Lit as well. Yep. Yep. Yes. So they're calculating the courses from 9 all the way through to 12. So those 16 core, they're going to calculate the GPA and it needs to be above a 2.3. Correct. Yes. 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 I don't think that's a disadvantage. So here's my question. Are you really good at math? And let's pretend you're not going to America and you need specialists and you need math methods for engineering in Australia. Maybe you do it if you love math. But no, you don't necessarily have to do it, and it wouldn't be a disadvantage. If you want to go to a very competitive business school, the Wharton School of Business at UPenn, they will tell you that you need a math methods or a spec because you need to have the most academic rigor math program to get into the Wharton School of Business. So to get in a Wharton School of Business, it may be required. So if you don't do it, could it be a negative? Maybe. For athletics, it does not matter. Does that make sense? Yeah. I can't hear you. Accounting is not a core course. Business administration is not a core course. Legal studies is. Economics is. And that doesn't mean they're not academic rigor. It just means the NCAA can't review everything. Okay? Yeah. So I am not a teacher, and I'm going to preface that. Some schools are giving students the opportunity where you can do a 1-2 in year 10, where you can perhaps have more of a reduced load in year 11 and year 12, and can that be an advantage? Yes. Is it the school's practice? I don't know. So I would be working with the schools. But yes, I think doing maybe a 1-2 in Year 10 could be incredibly advantageous. But again, it depends on your son, daughter, sport, all those kind of things. Okay, can I keep on going? Any more questions? All right. The NCAA also have, oh my gosh. I just realised I forgot the NCAA core course flyer because I've been on holidays today. Happy Labor Day, everyone. It's a US public holiday. I have had the day off. And I just realised I forgot the flyer. So note to self, when you schedule a session with a school and say, yes, I can do that day, make sure you look at the US public holidays that we have off. I will do that next time. But the NCAA have a really cool booklet, and I will give it to you when I send the after event email out. And they have a link, and when you hit that link, it looks a bit different now. These are all the subjects that are approved by course name only. So if the subject is on this list, it is approved. They also have a list where it says if your subject name is on this list, it is denied. What NCAA have done is they have a 400-page booklet that they have also now put on the website. So you could actually look up the state of Victoria on the NCAA website and it will tell you what subjects have been approved as well. I will send you those links. This is what we just worked through on those worksheets in front of you. So let's not spend any more time on that. The goal is from Year 9 on, try to get 4 subjects every year. So English does that, and then you need 3 every year thereafter. And that tends to be a really good plan to follow and would be our recommendation. This is the Australia page for the NCAA, which breaks down that 400-page booklet into the Australian section. This is the booklet as well as what it looks like. I will send you those links. Coming up with your sports resume becomes a really important tool, and I would say you need to have that done by the middle of Year 11. Why the middle of Year 11 becomes so important is that coaches can't communicate with you until the middle of Year 11. Most of your sports will have an August 1 deadline. That, ironically, is in that nice NCAA booklet that I said put under your pillow in regards to when that rule is. So adding yourself to a coach's radar becomes critical. How are they going to recruit you if they don't know you? And I would make sure that your current coaches are supporting you in this process and their details are put on the reference, because a coach is more likely to talk to a coach and saying, is Samantha Jackson really as good as what you're telling me? And the coach will go, nah. Or the coach goes, absolutely. She's going to be good for your team because of blah, blah, blah. All right? So that becomes a really important process. That recommendation letter really is going to give credence to who you are in regards to being recruited. I'm now going to turn off the PowerPoint because I actually want to show a couple of live sites that I think are really cool. Now, I think I have said, you never need to use organisations. Did I say that? I don't mind if you do, but you don't have to. Some of them have some really cool free resources that you don't have to pay to use. I think this is the best one. Let me just get it online. And I'll tell you why. I don't think that's the initial. Maybe it's... Yeah. I think it's a really cheeky company because it's got similar initials as the NCAA. This is not the NCAA. This company is endorsed by the Junior College Association and also the NAIA. I kind of like it. It has some really cool resources. On recruiting resources, they've just changed, let me pick your sport. I'm going to pick on women's soccer tonight because of the Matildas. So you could find your sport, and then it has some really cool things. It has a women's soccer recruiting calendar, recruiting guidelines, scholarship facts, how to get recruited, what you would put in your recruiting video. It is a really cool website. I think it has some really cool stuff on it. So you could also set up a free profile on this. Once you do that, the company is going to contact you and saying, want to give us some more money? And yes, you can if you want, but you don't have to. But it's a really good website in regards to what it is. The other thing that is really good, and I have a mental blank because I'm a little weary. What's this one? I really like this website. A very bored accountant in New York puts this together every year. And it's called scholarshipstats.com. And again, let's pick on baseball because it's the first on the list. What it does really nicely for us here is it tell you how many baseballers playing in America, how many will go on to college baseball, what the percentage of that is, and some cool little tidbits of information. And then down here, it breaks up really nicely. At NCAA Division I, there is 305 schools. There's an average roster size of 40 baseball players, and they're only allowed to give 11.7 scholarships. So all the sports, you can look up your sport, and it will give you the scholarship count, which I think is really cool. What then becomes really cool about this website is that it has a really cool map. Does anyone have a college on their list where they want to be recruited by? Is anyone talking to a coach? No one's talking to a coach yet? No one wants to tell me. You're all really scared. All right. So let's just pretend your school's in North Carolina. So North Carolina, it's going to be on the south table, okay? So let's scroll down the bottom. Actually, I lie. Let's just stay with Midwest. And I'm just going to change it to, I want to see all of them. So we've just gone to the Midwest. We're going to scroll down. So let's just pretend you're talking to any of these coaches. And you go, okay. I'm okay to be a Hawkeye today. That's the University of Iowa. Once you click this link, it goes directly into the athletic department website. So it really helps with that whole recruiting. I think we've got some basketballers in the room. So we're going to go to sports. Men's, okay, I want to be on their basketball program. I want to look at the roster. Let's pretend you're in year 12 this year. That means you're a senior. You want to look at the roster. Let me just scroll. Give me 1 second. So here is the roster, and you want to hope that there's also a lot of seniors on this list because they're going to graduate when you graduate. So they're looking for freshmen for their team, and that they're going to have spots. Because if they've got no seniors in the team, they're not going to be looking at recruiting for freshmen. Does that make sense? So you want to scroll down and make sure that there's a shitload of seniors on the list if you're a senior this year, or a junior if you're a junior this year. Okay? So it becomes that kind of research that you need to do, and then be reaching out to the coach and going, Coach, I see you got a couple of seniors graduating this year. Are they going to finish up, or are they having a COVID optional year? By the time, if you're a junior right now, COVID ramifications should be over. But because some players didn't play their freshman year, they have been given a do-over year. So even if they are a senior here in the roster, they may be given another year, and they may stay on as a graduate student. So the COVID hangover is going to be here for probably one more year. Does that make sense? But this is where this tool, I think, is kind of the coolest and the easiest to jump in and out other college programs. So that's probably all I was going to share tonight in regards to starting with that process. Is that enough? Are there questions that people have in the room that have not been answered that you wish were, that I can try and still do? Yeah. Yep. No problem, but now you're going to have transcripts from different schools. If your family work internationally, if you are an international family, if you're an army family, so you've got a couple of issues. You could be in a state, so you're going to have different transcripts from year 9, 10, 11, 12, and again, that's fine. Or you may have different countries. Now, again, that's fine, but I've been making sure I research that now and having those transcripts on file. Your current schools, let's say there's a couple of Scotch uniforms here tonight. If you're at Scotch now and you went somewhere else with year 9, you could give Mrs. Hawkins the transcript from your other school and she can upload it on your behalf. Okay, so that is no problem. But not having the transcript is more of a problem. But yeah, good question. Anything else? Let me just bring back the PowerPoint to make sure I have really kind of covered everything. Yeah, I kind of did. Helpful? Questions that you wish I'd answered that I haven't? Do I think it's worth, I'll come up to you in a minute, give me a second. I think it's worth pursuing. Do I think it's brilliant? Absolutely. Is it hard? Yes. Is it worthwhile? Yes. As a family and a parent, the first 6 months are probably the hardest for your sons and daughters. When they're calling you in that first 4 weeks, Mum, I hate it. It's okay, honey, you've tried, you can hop on a plane. Mum, you're not allowed to say that. Okay, sounds like you're having a shit day, Samantha. What can we do for you? Nothing, I think I flunked my math test. Okay, why don't you let us know what you flunked your math test? Now what happens is you may or may not flunk your math test. You never tell your mum or dad that you actually aced your math test. And she still thinks you're crying from last week and you're out there partying. So it becomes really important that you use the resources at the US colleges. Their jobs are to make you as young people incredibly successful. International students and an athlete have 2 advantages. You have your athletic department family and you have your international office. And your international office is there for you to succeed. So if you want to talk about your roommate who happens to be on your playing team and you want to vent about them, then go to the international office and vent and everyone's happy. My only words of wisdom is that if you are recruited as an athlete, I recommend that you never room with someone on your same team. Because if you're better than them and you are getting the playing time, it could be difficult. Now, some teams have a culture where everyone is living together and you may not be able to avoid that, and that's okay, but that would be my only words of wisdom. I always think you should stay with a fellow athlete because only the athletes know that you've got all the other extra training things, but my one recommendation would be not to live with a fellow teammate, if you could. The other reason is that you are together so often that it is nice to have a break and have a space that is not your sport, that you can relax, that you can not think about sport, in the confines of your room, between all that playing and practice. But do I think it's a brilliant opportunity? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Is it going to be hard? Maybe some days. But you're going to have more good days than bad days. And I think it's the best thing you can be doing. So I am happy to support as much as I can. I cannot get you a scholarship. You have to do that on your own. But I can give you a lot of tools and support to do that. So thank you for coming tonight. I will hang for a minute, but I know it's late. Ophelia and Rob, who are here at Scotch, thank you so much for having us tonight. We incredibly appreciate your time. Make sure you tick the entrance list, and I will send an after-event email. Happy US Labor Day, and have a nice rest of the week, and everyone enjoy school holidays.